Dr. Lutfi and Ruby Radwan started and run Willowbrook Farm in Oxfordshire, the first halal and tayyib farm in the UK. Dr. Lutfi, born in Essex to an English mother and Egyptian father in 1962, began to actively practice and embrace Islam when he was around 16. He began to participate in an Islamic youth group where he later met his wife Ruby. Ruby, born in Lahore, Pakistan, moved to London at age 5. She studied psychology at university and later trained as a holistic therapist. She taught at an A-level college and worked in a hospital as a reflexologist. After Dr. Lutfi completed his PhD in irrigation and social organisation from the University of Oxford, he took a post on the faculty teaching geography. As their family grew and life became busier, Ruby became increasingly interested in natural health alternatives and their family's diet. Together, they both questioned what it truly meant to consume and produce halal food. They then decided to both sell their home and move to rural Oxfordshire, where they started their farm. They have since created a thriving farm where they now live and raised their 5 children. They have tried to run their lives and their farm as simply as possible, in tune with nature, minimizing the negative impacts on the environment wherever possible. Here, the couple explain their thoughts on what the term halal and tayyib mean to them, their intentions behind starting the farm, and how they try to live in tune with nature.
I think so. There was this meat thing in the background that I was aware of, and we never questioned it. But we'd get stories. Now, this is a very long time ago, so this is like 45 years ago. We'd hear stories about how bad the meat was and how it wasn't really halal anyway and stuff like that. But we didn't really pay much attention to them because, at 15, 20, I really wasn't concerned. Couldn't even cook, so I really wasn't concerned about the state of meat. It wasn't a thing for me, but it was there in the background, and the memories only come back because now we are concerned about these things. Oh yeah, thanks to say that. And I remember my cousin once, he must have been about 17, started working in the butchery, and he told us that the chickens, they just kill them with a recording and an automatic knife, and the knife just goes really fast and blah blah. And I just thought, he's just like winding me up. That's just ridiculous. That's not how chickens are killed. And then later on, finding out myself that is how halal chickens are killed, and thinking, so what's halal about that?
The whole ethos of what we're trying to do was to understand what halal really means. Because we'd seen what halal doesn't mean. It doesn't mean a Punjabi butcher with a flashing neon sign selling crap, indoor, factory-reared, chemically laden meat, which is just an industrial process. And farming had become an industrial process. Our lives had become dependent on all these industrial processes. So as humans, not just as Muslims, we were living so separate from nature, and that's part of the big crisis we're facing, that man lives so separate from nature that we've reached the point of almost no return because we're not observing the impact of what we do. So we felt that if you're not intimately connected with all those processes, not just in producing the food, but in how you live on the land, the materials you use on the land, how you build your dwellings and how you source your energy and how you actually interact as an entity with the whole of the nature around you, then you're not really living a halal life, and the food and the produce that you produce isn't halal. So we started from the simple premise of halal in the Quran is defined in a very simple verse. It says, they ask you, what is halal? Say to them, what is halal is what is tayyib. So it actually brings in that word. It's not that we've made this up. The Quran, and for most people 20 years ago when we said this, they thought, what? No, I've never heard that before. But if someone says to you, what does halal mean? Yes, you've got the technical meaning, it means permissible. But what does the Quran define halal as? It defines it as something that is tayyib, pure, natural, healthy, organic, wholesome, all of those words.
Yes, I think the farm actually started much earlier because we had experiences in Sudan, in Egypt, where Lutfi was doing his PhD, where we lived in tiny villages, and it was nothing like London, and it was a real eye-opener just seeing how people lived, seeing how they connected to the environment, seeing how poor they were, and what that meant, seeing animals being killed in front of me for food, animals that we would in the West just think as pets, like a nice chicken or a nice duck, and my God, chop their head off, pluck it, and what's that about? I've never seen that when I ate meat before. So being exposed to the reality, of life, was quite important to our decision to take then responsibility for our artificial life that we live in cities. So that meant that that affected both of us, and because having children, I became very aware of what I was feeding this child was part of its growth and its development. So that was really important. I didn't want to feed my children just any food. I was really concerned about feeding them wholesome food for their development, and then what they see, what they hear, the environment, not having internet, trying, interact with the kids, reading to them, going out, and all that experience, bring kids up, all that became very important. And their health, not relying on drugs and medication, and trying to, look at food and look at herbs and natural ways of health, or, being more holistic, all that stuff just, slowly evolved over the years. So when it came to having the farm, it was an opportunity to take responsibility and put that into practice as much as I can.
Taken a post at Oxford University lecturing in geography, so I was teaching. So we'd really sort of, after moving here for my PhD, we'd moved as a family, and with small trips out to Sudan and back, or Egypt and back, we pretty much had based ourselves in Oxford from that time onwards. And Ruby was teaching psychology at an A-level college with the family, and I was teaching at the university or going abroad and doing bits of research and consultancy. And that progressed and happened right up to where I was approaching 40. So at least sort of 12, 15 years of lecturing before we finally thought, well, actually, no, let's do something different. And we sold our house and bought this patch of land, gave up our jobs and started farming. It was quite crazy. It's one of those things that loads of people come to us and say, oh, we'd love to have done something like that, but very few people would actually do it. So I guess there was an element of craziness in it. It seemed to be the right thing. Ruby was very much interested in natural health and the family and diet, and we were starting to live more naturally. We'd moved out of Oxford to a village just outside Oxford where we were buying our house, and we were growing some veg. We'd just become much more connected and looking at our children's lifestyles, and other reasons such as maybe getting a bit bored with teaching and not wanting to travel abroad so much because the family couldn't move. So a lot of things came together, and it just seemed like a good thing to do and an adventure in a way. We didn't really realise the enormity of it and the challenges that it would bring.
And then food, we try to eat as much as we create on the farm, so all our meat that we consume is our own meat. And then vegetables, we have a vegetable garden, so we try to grow as much as possible. Sometimes we do really well, I was just counting, all our onions for 6 months have been grown here. Now I'm going to have to start, I think in a few weeks I have to start going to the supermarket for onions and garlic and potatoes and leeks, and in the summer there's a lot more, of course. And then you try to preserve what you can, like the plums and any fruit we grow, we either freeze them or make them into jam. Apples, we try to do some apple juice. Doesn't last all year, but we have a bit of our own apple juice. And then, green vegetables, aubergines. It means you have to eat it in that short window, which is a really good learning curve. And again, going back to health, ideally, if you can eat seasonally, it's better for you because Allah gives you the nutrition you need at that time. We change throughout the seasons. Everything changes, and it's not the prayer time that changes. You feel like you want to sleep more, you feel like you want to eat more, you feel like you want to work more, depending the seasons. And when you're on the farm, you're connected to the seasons, you respond much more to the environment that Allah created than the environment that you create in a city, because you can just create your own environment and live the lifestyle that you want to live. You don't have that choice if you're going to commit to a farm-like holistic environment, because we have to come in at 4 o'clock. We can't work out there later than 4, which means you have to do your Maghrib, because you come in, you have to, so you connect to the prayers much more realistically.